A large storm train is coming, and it's going to bring more severe weather along with a refreshing cool down across much of the country. This is a significant weather pattern that we need to pay close attention to over the next week or so. Over the next 2 days, we're expecting repeated rounds of severe thunderstorms to track from the high plains all the way into the Midwest and Gulf Coast, producing damaging wind swaths, giant hail, and isolated tornadoes. The severe weather threat is going to be very substantial across multiple areas, and we need to make sure everyone stays prepared. But here's the thing. Behind all of this severe activity, cooler weather is on the way. An early taste of fall is about to arrive as a Canadian air mass is set to plunge into the Great Lakes with unseasonable cool downs today and tomorrow. The contrast is going to be absolutely stunning. Meanwhile, heat and humidity continue to bake the south, alongside 2 active tropical disturbances that are developing in the Atlantic. This is truly the kind of weather pattern that could make you remember your ex-girlfriend. The regional contrasts are going to be dramatic across the nation. So let's get right into this forecast because we do have a lot to talk about today, and frankly, this is one of the most active periods we've seen in years. We're going to begin with our severe weather potential over the next few days, and we'll start with today, which is Monday. We have 4 separate slight risks of severe weather to monitor. We have one across the far northern plains, another one in the high plains, one over Louisiana and Mississippi, and another one along the Carolina coastline. On top of all that, we're looking at a giant marginal threat that covers most of the Great Plains. The big risks for today are going to be significant damaging winds, and they could actually be as high as 85 miles per hour, which is a dangerous situation for anyone caught in that path. This dangerous wind threat is stretching all the way from Grand Forks and Fargo back towards Denver, Colorado, and even into northeastern Nevada. The destructive potential here is really significant for anyone in that corridor, and we need to make sure people are taking proper shelter precautions. Otherwise, we're watching for isolated to scattered damaging wind gusts along the Gulf Coast and the Carolina coastline as well. These wind threats could cause significant property damage and dangerous conditions for those in these regions. There's also a threat of some very large hail because supercells are expected to form this afternoon across parts of the northern plains. This large hail threat will be primarily for those living in Nebraska and southern South Dakota. Right along the North Dakota-Minnesota border, we should at least see a few supercells form this afternoon, and these supercells could lead to hail reaching the size of baseballs. That's a significant hail threat that should not be taken lightly. Now, when it comes to our tornado threat for today, it's going to be primarily concentrated in North Dakota, where there could be 1 or 2 isolated tornadoes due to those discrete supercells that develop. There's also a low tornado risk along the Carolina coastline near Cape Hatteras, as we will have a couple of supercells there as well, and those may actually produce a couple of tornadoes, in addition to there being a lot of heavy rain, which could lead to some flash flooding concerns. So we have a dual risk here of flash flooding and isolated tornadoes along the Carolina coastline. I do want to point out something important. If there are tornadoes in North Carolina today, the odds of them being rain-wrapped are pretty high. So I do recommend that if you have any tornado warning in your area, you definitely make sure you stay indoors. It is not Kansas out there, and these rain-wrapped tornadoes can be incredibly dangerous because they're hidden by heavy precipitation. As we transition into Tuesday, the threat of severe weather will continue anywhere from the Central Plains back into the upper Midwest. There's also another risk of severe weather developing in the southeast. We're mainly going to be watching for a significant wind threat again. That'll be primarily for those in Kansas and Nebraska. We could have damaging winds as high as 85 miles per hour, which is going to be very destructive for anyone in that region. Otherwise, we're looking at isolated damaging wind gusts from Minneapolis back up towards Duluth. The Storm Prediction Center did mention a slight risk of severe weather may be needed in a future outlook over here in the upper Midwest. We could see some activity there that escalates into a full slight risk. Otherwise, large hail is just going to be an isolated concern tomorrow. We're not really seeing anything too significant there for widespread hail. And then a couple of tornadoes will be possible, mainly around the Eau Claire, Wisconsin area, back up towards Duluth, and maybe even up towards International Falls. So there is actually a chance of a live stream tomorrow, so make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and you have that bell notification enabled. Now, as we move into Wednesday, the threat of severe weather will shift into the Midwest and Great Lakes region. We need to talk more about the timing of severe weather for the next few days, and we'll start with what is happening today. Most of our severe weather will be located across the northern plains. By this afternoon, we'll likely have a cluster of thunderstorms ongoing with maybe 1 or 2 of these storms being discrete supercells. They will be working with enough wind shear where an isolated tornado threat cannot be ruled out. But generally speaking, large hail and damaging wind gusts will be the big concern near Grand Forks, Fargo, and even western Minnesota this evening as this cluster of thunderstorms decides to dive down to the south and southeast. We're likely not going to see much severe weather overnight tonight, but if you do live over here in North Dakota, South Dakota, or far western Minnesota, stay on alert for damaging winds, some large hail, and maybe an isolated tornado. Elsewhere, a few supercells are possible yet again in Nebraska and South Dakota, which is fairly similar to what we've seen over the last few days with isolated wind, hail, and maybe a brief tornado being on the table. Overall, I think the risk is going to be pretty low there compared to what we're expecting in the northern plains. Now on Tuesday, we have a better chance of significant severe weather, in my opinion. That could actually impact a bit more of a populated area because the Midwest will be under the gun for some severe storms. We're going to have a low pressure system spinning up here in Canada, and this should allow for some supercellular thunderstorms to form. Right now, most models are showing that the most significant severe weather during the early to mid-afternoon will be in northeastern Minnesota, where there could be enough wind shear for an isolated tornado. But the main concerns will be damaging winds and large hail. However, during the evening, there could be a few storms that actually fire in western Wisconsin, east of Minneapolis. If any supercells do end up getting going here, we could see a non-zero tornado threat, in addition to damaging winds and large hail being possible. There's going to be plenty of wind shear, especially since this is a low pressure system that is more surface-based. So we got to watch this area very closely as we go into Tuesday afternoon and evening. And then if you live back down here in Nebraska or Kansas, it looks like a pretty stormy Tuesday with many storms forecasted to fire. Damaging winds will be the big threat here near Kearney, Salina, and Hayes. We could even see a mesoscale convective system form, which is a line of thunderstorms that could cause some problems during the mid to late afternoon and early evening before eventually falling apart. The tornado threat is forecasted to be very low in this area. And then, as we go into Wednesday, we will have the same storm system that is going to be spiraling over Canada. It will eventually move over Lake Huron, and this should allow for more storms to fire around Lake Michigan during the afternoon on Wednesday. In this environment, we're going to have plenty of instability growing. There's going to be a lot of instability stretching from Kansas City back into northern Michigan, especially near Chicago and Peoria, is where I think our best chance of significant severe weather will likely reside. There will be enough wind shear for another low-end tornado threat, but generally speaking, damaging winds and isolated hail will be the main threats on Wednesday. A couple tornadoes are definitely possible, especially as we get closer to 5 to 10 p.m. on Wednesday. I'm watching anywhere from Springfield, Illinois, back up towards Grand Rapids, and even maybe near Fort Wayne. We'll likely start with a couple of supercells, and then this will cluster into a line of thunderstorms before weakening as we go into early Thursday morning. But guys, the next few days are actually going to be pretty active. It's really honestly surprising how much severe weather we've had so far in the month of August. We've not had this active of an August in about 5 years. We're still just in the middle of the month. So we've had a very active August so far, and it does not look like that's slowing down anytime soon. And then after Wednesday, that storm system will make its way into the northeast, which will likely spread plenty of showers and thunderstorms anywhere from Atlanta, Georgia, back up towards Quebec. On Friday, another storm system is set to form over in the Midwest and once again in the Central Plains, bringing another shot of isolated severe weather on Friday to Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Kansas. Saturday is looking to be a bit more significant. I think both Saturday and Sunday could actually feature a potential for a few significant supercells with all hazards possible, including large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes. I know it might sound crazy to say that, with this being about 5 or 6 days out, but a lot of models have actually been hinting at this for the last 2 days now. Even the Storm Prediction Center has noted that they might need a slight risk in future outlooks, anywhere from Chicago back down towards Kansas. So it looks like Saturday and Sunday could be fairly active, and we need to keep our eyes on that system as it develops. Sunday will likely end up being more of a severe weather day in the far northern plains as a storm system forms over here in very far southern Canada near Saskatchewan. And then, on Monday of next week, that same storm system may bring more severe weather again to the Midwest. So the last week here of August is set to be very active, and it should lead to at least a few more severe weather events over the next few days, and then eventually for the first week of September. We don't really know what's going to happen yet, but the GFS model is actually hinting at snow over in the Rockies by the first week of September, which may or may not happen. But it definitely looks like it's going to stay like a very active pattern, even as we head into September. Now, I think the big story over the last several days are the temperatures, because look at the Midwest and even the Great Lakes this morning. We have temperatures diving into the 40s, even some upper 30s in northern Wisconsin, and the upper peninsula of Michigan. That's a dramatic shift for late August weather. Meanwhile, the morning low temperature over near Dallas is in the mid-80s, so it is absolutely brutal down there right now. The contrast between regions is stunning. The heat is going nowhere, If you live in Texas and Oklahoma, it's easily going to get into the hundreds today and tomorrow and probably for the next 7 days or so. But if you live across the Midwest and the Northeast, this nice weather really isn't going anywhere anytime soon, especially with all these storm systems that are coming in. We do have another shot of actual cold air that will happen on Friday in Minnesota and Wisconsin, where we once again could see some places drop into the 40s and 50s for low temperatures. Meanwhile, heat will build in the Great Plains, mainly from Kansas, back into Dallas by Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I think that heat is going to start to expand back off to the north. This should allow once again for a bit more of a significant day of severe weather to take place either Saturday or Sunday across the Central Plains, maybe the Midwest, and the Ohio Valley. But temperatures are going to soar in Kansas City and St. Louis. And then, by the first week of September, we may see some more big shots of cold air across the Northeast and the Midwest. We might even see some really cold air in the Pacific Northwest, depending on the evolution of all of our storm systems as we go into next week. But again, there's a lot of time between now and then. It does look like, though September could actually start out pretty cool across much of the country, which would be a dramatic shift from the heat we're experiencing in the south right now. Now, on the other hand, the tropics are exploding in activity right now, mainly in the Pacific, but even in the Atlantic Ocean, we are starting to see several areas of development. We have a couple of tropical storms right now across the Pacific Ocean, but more importantly, we got to watch the activity that is out here in the Atlantic Ocean, because we now have a 50% chance of formation over the next 7 days in the main development region. There's also growing potential of another tropical system forming just east of Bermuda, with about a 50% chance over the next couple of days. This probably will not impact the United States directly. It might bring some rip currents to New England as we get closer to the middle of the week, but otherwise, if this were to form, it's going to likely go up towards Nova Scotia. It could bring some heavy rainfall up there in Canada. But this is going to be the big deal, though, because this certain system here will have the best chance of overcoming the wind shear in the Atlantic, which has sheared apart almost every system this year so far. It actually could become a hurricane in the long run, so we need to keep an eye out on this really closely over the next several days. Now, over the next couple of days, there is actually growing confidence that this could become a tropical storm by as early as Wednesday over here in the main development region. This is a hurricane model, which has it actually becoming a hurricane rather quickly over in the main development region. And even by Friday, this could end up being a pretty powerful system. Now, what comes after Friday is a lot more uncertain. Right now, the GFS model has this thing continuing to be a pretty intense storm system, but again, tracking kind of out to sea, not really going towards the Lesser Antilles. So I think the Lesser Antilles are doing okay when it comes to this storm system, regardless of whether it does become a hurricane or not. Most of the ensemble models and also other weather models are keeping this away from the islands, so that is a good thing. Hopefully nothing changes in the forecast. There could always be some changes since this has not formed yet. But we have a high pressure system that should be able to pull this off to the north before ever getting towards the Caribbean Sea. And then eventually, as we go into early next week, during the first week of September, this will likely continue to track north. Some of the ensemble members have this getting a little bit closer to Bermuda, but most models and ensemble groups have been keeping this well out to sea. So it does not appear as if this will be impacting any countries at this time, but we'll continue to keep you posted with the latest in case something does form here. It is a good reminder that it is hurricane season, and things could get pretty wild over the next week or two if things can actually get going, especially with this tropical wave, which again, I think is very likely that it is going to become our next tropical storm. We need to be watching this very closely as it develops and as the models continue to refine their forecast track and intensity. As always, thank you all again so much for watching today's detailed forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below because important content like this comes out regularly and you don't want to miss it. There's a chance of a live stream tomorrow and Wednesday, so make sure to click the bell icon down below so you're notified with the latest updates whenever we go live. We will see you in the next video or live stream, and remember to stay safe out there if severe weather impacts your area.